Okay, so last time I talked about A.K.I, I made a list of reasons why A.K.I is better than people think. I talked about some of her strengths, the things that I think are maybe hidden until you play her for a little while, the reasons that she's better than people give her credit for. But now I want to kind of visit the other side of the spectrum, and I want to talk about 5 reasons A.K.I is maybe not as good as I think. Character weaknesses. She's a strange character because she's got a lot of strengths and a lot of weaknesses, and it's hard to kind of like balance how those two fit together. So I'm going to talk about what I think are 5 main weaknesses A.K.I has as a character. For the record, I do still think A.K.I is good. I'm just trying to give an even-handed review of strengths and weaknesses. Alright, so the very first thing I want to talk about, number 1, is her drive rush checks. Being able to stop your opponent from turning green and skipping neutral is a big part of this game. And I feel like A.K.I has trouble putting a stop to it. Because she basically has 2 normals, which are her main drive rush checks. She either has stand medium punch or crouch medium punch. And both of these have like an upside, but also a big downside. So stand medium punch is very fast. This is 6 frames. So if you react late, you've got slow old man reactions like me. This is a good button. But as you saw right there, that's the downside of stand medium punch. It doesn't have that many active frames, and it causes her to move forward. You'll notice that most normals in this game, when you press them, your character will kind of lunge forward and then step back to their original position. Like crouch medium punch, she moves forward and then goes back. Stand medium punch actually causes A.K.I to advance on whiff. She spins around with the punch and then moves forward. Which means that if you try and intercept a drive rush with this and your timing is off by even a little, this happens. So like if your opponent delays their drive rush at all, if rather than going for an instant drive rush like that, they parry for a few frames, like this happens quite a lot. You'll see people do like a quarter of a second of parry and then drive rush. If they do that and you don't react and press stand medium punch, that slight delay will get you killed. So this is the fast button that you press, but it's very risky because of the way she advances forward like that. So then you think to yourself, okay, well I'll switch to crouch medium punch instead. This is more like a traditional normal. It's more like a standard reach out and then step back normal. And it comes at a price though. As you can see, this is 8 frame startup, so it's a good bit slower than her stand medium punch. It's 2 frames slower. This also doesn't have the best hitbox. I'll talk a little bit more about hitboxes later. But the hitbox on this thing is kind of rough. It has a very large hurtbox and a fairly small hitbox. And it also has a lot of recovery on whiff. So again, if you aren't very precise with your timing on this button, you can also get killed. So a lot of characters in this game like to skip neutral by just drive rushing at you. And I feel like A.K.I.'s checks on drive rush are hit and miss. The only upside here, which I've talked about before, is that she does have a very good buffer. If she buffers her drive rush checks into down and 2 punches, she does at least get a good combo out of it. Because you can do this. So she does have a nice way to punish drive rushes if you get the timing perfectly like that. But yeah, her drive rush checks I think are a little bit weak. Alright, number 2, I think is a bit of a weakness in this game, is very, very poor options for side switching. Being able to side switch in combos in this game is a huge deal because the corner is such a dangerous place to be. If you can side switch your opponent in a combo, I think that's a very strong tool to have. A.K.I has almost no way to side switch. I spent 100,000 years trying to find a good side switch. But if I break a DI, if my opponent goes for a DI in the corner here, and I react and counter it, I get a back throw, like every character in the game. That's about it. That's about it. She does have some very finicky combos where you can do stuff like this. There we go. That took like 5 attempts to do. It does bad damage, and it requires 4 bars of drive gauge for a not very good side switch. So that's far too expensive for not enough damage and not enough positioning. For comparison, just a little comparison here compared to my old character. Here's what JP gets if he breaks a DI while he's cornered. I mean, these are different realms of reality these two characters are living in right now. That's quite a big gap in side switch potential. So yeah, not being able to steal the cornerback off hits is bad. And another good example is Ken. We all know Ken can corner you off any hit, because he'll do something like Ken can side switch you off any hit anywhere, and it's so good. Being able to side switch in this game, in combos, like I said, very, very important tool, and A.K.I can't really do it at all. Alright, the next one I want to talk about, number 3, I've just labeled as weird frame data. I don't want to say outright bad frame data, she just has very weird frame data. Some of her frame data is actually very good. She has some surprisingly good tools. Like I said, having a 6 frame medium in this game is very good for certain things. You can interrupt a lot of strings with stuff like this, but she also has some very odd frame data that doesn't really make any sense. So one of the ones I want to talk about right off the bat is this move right here. Hang on. This thing right here. So for those who don't know, when A.K.I does her fireball, she can cancel the fireball recovery into this whip. And it's kind of a mind game, right? So the idea is the fireball is like -10 on block. But if my opponent tries to take their turn here, I can go for a sneaky chain like this. So they try to interrupt the unsafe fireball, and they get hit by the whip, right? That's the basic mind game. However, the frame data on the whip makes absolutely no sense to me, because this thing, I don't know if you can see right now on the screen, is -2 on counter hit. I don't know why that would be that way. It's actually -4 on hit. It's -2 on counter hit. So if I catch my opponent mashing here with the little mix-up, then I get the amazing reward of being -2 and half screen away, which doesn't really make any sense to me. I'm not sure why they would design it like this, if that's the reason it exists. Because let's do another comparison. I feel it's important to do comparisons between the good characters and everyone else. Ken has a very similar mix-up to this, right? Ken has an almost identical mix-up to this, which is that. So Ken will do something like this. He'll do an unsafe special, like Jinrai, but if he wants to, he can go for a frame trap into a follow-up to catch you trying to interrupt the string. But the difference here is that Ken's equivalent of that mix-up leaves him +5 on hit up close. So you get a full combo for Ken if you land that mix-up. The exact same kind of situation as A.K.I. But for some reason A.K.I.'s is -2 on counter hit while Ken's is +5. The other thing is, the other part of this mix-up is that if my opponent doesn't try and interrupt and just blocks the whole thing, as you can see here, Ken is -5 if he decides to go for the frame trap but you don't bite. So Ken can do the entire string here, and he's -5 and left at a range where a lot of characters will struggle to punish a 5 frame from this distance. Now let's compare that -5 to A.K.I.'s equivalent of that mix-up. So, Ken is -5, A.K.I. is -16. Which is a big difference. It's a very big difference, because being -16, your opponent can do something like this. So while Ken is almost completely unpunishable after his Jinrai mix-up, if I go for the A.K.I mix-up and my opponent doesn't bite, I might lose the entire round. So yeah, weird frame data. Alright, and the second half of my weird frame data, I want to talk about a couple of normals. So I already talked about Crouch Medium Punch. This thing's 8 frames startup. But it's one of her few long-range cancelable mediums. This is like her only long-range special cancel option. She's got very few special cancelable normals, and this is probably the longest one she has. But this normal, let me get up some frame data for this normal. So this is A.K.I.'s Crouch Medium Punch. It's 8 frames startup, 3 frames active, 18 frames of recovery on whiff, which turns into 21 because it has this property right here, where if you whiff it, it gains a bonus 3 frames of extra recovery. So this has 21 frames of recovery on whiff. It's only +1 on hit, so you don't get to link anything afterwards, you have to cancel it. And it's -3 on block, so it's not your turn afterwards, right? Now let's do a little comparison to another very strong character in this game. Alright, here we go. So this is Luke's kind of equivalent normal. A special cancelable crouching medium punch that has good range and is designed to whiff punish and drive rush cancel. So, Luke's is 6 frames startup, A.K.I.'s is 8. Luke's is 2 frames active, A.K.I.'s is 3, so one win for A.K.I. there. Luke's is 14 frames of recovery under all circumstances. A.K.I.'s is 18, which turns into 21 on whiff. Luke's is +5 on hit. A.K.I.'s is +1. Luke's is +1 on block. A.K.I.'s is -3. So with the exception of A.K.I.'s having one more active frame, every single other aspect of this button is worse in every possible way. It has worse startup, worse recovery, worse advantage on hit, and worse advantage on block. And again, I know that comparing like normals 1-to-1 isn't necessarily a truly fair comparison because, you know, every character is not going to have the same frame data, but like functionally these two normals are supposed to be used in similar ways. But A.K.I.'s just feels like they've been tuned for a different season. It's like she's playing Season 2 and Luke is playing Season 1. What about damage? They're both 600, so same damage. And this, yeah, as some people in chat have mentioned, I'm going to segue straight from number 3 to number 4. I've talked about some weird frame data decisions in A.K.I.'s kit. Now it's time to talk about hitboxes. And I'm going to use the exact same normal for comparison here because this is a good way to illustrate it. So we've just shown that Luke's Crouch Medium Punch's frame data is better in almost every way than A.K.I.'s. Now let's have a look at the hitboxes because you might think, okay, well maybe A.K.I. has a big disjointed hitbox on hers and Luke doesn't. This is A.K.I.'s Crouch Medium Punch. It has a gigantic hurtboxes all around her and not a very long hitbox, and the hitbox extends a tiny little way past the edge of the hurtbox. She has about a nanometer of disconnect at the end of the hitbox here, where it slightly extends past it, right? Now let's have a look at Luke's. Oh. Luke has what I can only describe as 100,000 miles of disjointed hitbox beyond the end of his fist. He also has a much smaller hurtbox around the rest of his body, as you can see here. There's a little gap between the two hurtboxes, which A.K.I. doesn't have. So A.K.I.'s hurtboxes are bigger in every way, and also the hitbox is smaller in every way. So I guess it's also worth mentioning that this wouldn't annoy me. This wouldn't be an issue if this was like how all hitboxes were designed. So if they decided to shave off like 60% of this hitbox, this would be fine. But it just feels like making life harder for yourself if you don't use the Luke option. Show Guile? I don't know, what does Guile's look like? Hang on. Yeah, that's another good example. Another Crouch Medium Punch that's designed to be like a basic combo starter, special cancelable. Again, you can see that Guile has great big chunk of extended hitbox here. A big disjoint at the end, and a fairly tucked in hurtbox all around it. And yeah, A.K.I did not win the hitbox viewer wars. And then we have the final boss of disconnected hitboxes in this game. This is a bit of a tangent right now. We're not even looking at like similar normals. JP exists on another plane of existence, but it's okay because I'm an honest low tier A.K.I player now, so I don't have to defend this anymore. But yeah, so A.K.I.'s quarter circle forward chain is also a disjointed weapon-based move. But as you can see right here, A.K.I does have disjoints once it fully extends. But she also has this absolutely ginormous hurtbox here, which is very easy to get hit. And then the moment the chain hitbox runs out, she leaves behind this absolutely gigantic lingering hurtbox for, what is this? Good lord, like 5 frames? She leaves behind like a half-screen hurtbox for 5 frames. So yeah, she, even with her weapon hitboxes, she is no JP. I mean, look at that. JP would never ever get hit by a situation like this with his disjoints. Okay, so I've talked a bit about hitboxes and hurtboxes, and the final reason. Weakness number 5. I've just listed this as DI vulnerability. I think A.K.I has a lot of moves that are very weak to drive impact in this game. So I've made a quick list here. Because she's got a lot of moves with a lot of recovery that aren't special cancelable, which is the issue. She's got very few special cancelable moves. Her only special cancelable heavy is stand heavy kick, and that can only be done up close. So, just right now the list. All of these moves are guaranteed DIs with no chance of a counter except for cancelling into level 3. Stand fierce. There is nothing I can do about stand. If they DI the stand fierce, I can't not get hit by it because this is not super cancelable. Forward heavy kick, her best pressure normal. This is also a guaranteed DI. Can't special cancel it. Any string into fireball whip. Any string into fireball. I should point out there's no mix up here. If I do the fireball and hold back, I get hit. If I cancel into the whip, I still get hit. So both variants of her fireball, regardless of if you cancel into the chain or not, both of these are guaranteed DIs. Coward crouch roll is a guaranteed DI if I do it immediately. So this will hit. It is possible to slightly delay the coward crouch roll and low profile like this. But that's very risky. I have to basically hard read the DI and stay in coward crouch for a bunch of extra frames. Yeah, like none of her specials are DI safe. Even her fireball in neutral is very vulnerable to reaction DI. If you're in the mid-range and you've got good reactions, you can actually just DI this on reaction. This has a lot of recovery. Now, a couple of these do have level 3 cancels. So, for example, if you have level 3 stock, you can cancel into level 3 to save yourself. But you don't always have access to level 3, and spending 3 bars just to protect yourself from a random drive impact, not ideal. So I feel like she is quite vulnerable to people just throwing out YOLO DI. Oh yeah, and this one as well. I forgot this one. Quarter circle back heavy punch, which is often used to end strings, is also a guaranteed DI, unless you level 3 cancel it. So yeah, I think, in my opinion, those are like A.K.I.'s main weaknesses, but I feel like they're not too glaring, and a lot of them only feel like weaknesses when you compare them to the best characters in the game. So, as I said earlier, like, it's one thing to say, this thing is bad, and it's another thing to say, this just isn't as good as Ken or Luke or JP. I think those are her main weaknesses in this game. But if you disagree, let me know what you guys think down in the comments section. As always, subscribe. It helps me out. And I will see you guys in the next video.